The Labour Appeal Court has upheld an interdict against a public sector strike. It's being led by Nehawu. Last week was very messy with these protests by essential workers and the union. To remind you of the numbers, now the union seeking a 10% wage increase. Government has come back, only offering 4.7%. Health Minister Joe Patla has linked deaths of 4 patients, including children, to the mass action. But it's only part of the story. Let's try and get the sense of where we are with Public Servants Association Chief Negotiator. It's Jannie Oosthuizen joining us this morning. Jannie, hello and good morning. I appreciate your time. So now we know the interdict has been upheld as well. Give me a sense off the back of it being upheld yesterday. What does that do in the world of a chief negotiator? Good morning.
Well, thank you, Gavin. Good morning to all the listeners. Yes, well, we are pleased by the Labour Appeal Court that upheld the interdict. The reason, therefore, is the law is clear. No essential service worker is prohibited to participate in any industrial action unless there's a minimum service level agreement in place, which is not in government at this stage. So we are happy to see that the law has actually taken its course. We cannot allow and we condemn the violent behavior and the conduct of certain individuals during this protest or strike action, as it actually prohibited and infringed on the constitutional right and the democracy of our country. And therefore, we cannot allow such behavior. If you want to do industrial action, the PSA have participated in such actions last year, if you can recall, and it was peaceful, and we have demonstrated in terms and within the ambit of the law. So we expect that each and every union that participates in such action will do that in the ambit of the law.
Is there a view of the PSA that can see the argument from the Nehawu perspective? It's not just this wage negotiation for this year. They're talking about 2022, 2023 as well, Jannie, with the across-the-board 3%. Is there a view that PSA could look at as well, that Nehawu is obviously sharing, that this is the only way to get government's attention? What do you make of that sort of comment?
Well, yeah, it is very unfortunate, and it is the first time in the history of the bargaining council that the employer went and implemented unilateral implementation of 3%. And we concur with the sentiments of Nehawu regarding they negate from the 2020 wage agreement. They've implemented unilateral 3% in 2022, which for us, we also did not accept. We also issued a strike notice, but we have decided to come back to the bargaining council and see how best we can try and engage the employer for a better offer going forward this year. I mean, if you're outside in the street, but it seems to me, and it's very unfortunate, that the employer is only listening when things become so disruptive and turn into violence. If we look at the Eskom strike last year as well, when they are in tatters, they cannot provide electricity to the country, but when they revert to violence, then all of a sudden there was a reasonable and acceptable increase for Eskom. So it appears that that is the only language that the employer understands. But in the back of that, we cannot allow that people die. We cannot allow that your right to health services is being infringed the way it was done. And we cannot allow that members want to go to work, being intimidated and prohibited for entering into the premises. I mean, the no work, no pay principle will apply. And if our members are not at work which want to work, then the no work, no pay principle must also apply. So it is really an administrative nightmare to deal with it. But at the backdrop, yes, we want to call on Nehawu. Let's all go back to the bargaining council. Let's engage, because if you're outside the process, your voice cannot be heard. You cannot make sure that there's a better deal on the table this year around. And that is why we are back at the table, to ensure and to push the employer for a reasonable and acceptable offer going forward this year, and to stop the attack on collective bargaining, stop the unilateral implementation, what we see for the first time in the history of this country.
Let me ask you very briefly, because I want to get your thoughts, Jannie, in a moment about the talk of the Department of Public Enterprises being dissolved in a couple of years. But I just want to finish this part of the conversation very quickly. As a chief negotiator, seeing the violence that we have and the intimidation over the past week or so, how much more difficult does it make your job when the bargaining council has to go back to the employer?
Well, now we do make our job difficult because remember, you need to try and to stop the situation outside and appease all people. So actually, it can derail the process because attention is being divided now. You need to give attention on the side of the strike and the violence and the intimidation. And on the other hand, you need to be at the negotiation table in order to make sure that we have a better deal. So I actually... It does pose some significant challenges, but we are working around it, and we are busy dealing with negotiations behind closed doors, and we are hopeful that we will strike a better deal and an acceptable and reasonable deal very soon.
Let me ask you just in closing, Jannie, just while I've got you, I'd like to get your view and your comment on this. We heard the President talking about in the next administration, the Department of Public Enterprises is going to cease to exist. What's the reaction when you hear that piece of news? Just as I say goodbye, briefly, if you could.
Well, from our side, we welcome the announcement. However, our role as Labour is there to ensure that our members' rights and interests are protected. When these people need to be transferred to specific departments, then we need to make sure that the remuneration and the benefits is not in touch or that they are not worse off than they were currently. So we will watch the space. We can see that all our SOEs are struggling, especially the ESCOM, the SAA, the Postnet. You can call whatever you want with the SOEs. And there might be better control measures and good governance principles that will attach to it if it is under specific departments. But it's still early days, and we will have to see how it's going to play out.
Yeah, it's only under the next administration, we understand, the DPE no longer going to be in its current form. And Jannie, I appreciate your time in speaking to us. Jannie Oosthuizen is the Public Servants Association, the PSA Chief Negotiator.